We all know Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's an NBA champion, finals MVP, the league MVP. He was even a scoring champion. The same guy who turned Oklahoma City from a rebuilding project into a dynasty in the making. But hold on. What about the 10 players who were drafted ahead of him? Some are still household names. Some became superstars in their own right. Some are still chasing relevance on their 4th or 5th team. And some, well, let's just say that they probably don't want to be reminded that a player ranked 31st in his recruiting class, a player scouts compared to Elfrid Payton, went on to win MVP while they were fighting for roster spots. The 2018 NBA draft is one of the most fascinating what-ifs in basketball history. I mean, look, this was 8 years ago. Nobody was looking at a skinny kid from Kentucky who barely started until mid-season and thought that they were going to watch one of the future best players in the world. But that's exactly what makes this story so wild. Before the MVPs and the scoring titles and the 130-game streak of consecutive 20-point games, 10 names were called first. 10 teams, 10 decisions that will haunt front offices forever. The picks made by organizations that looked at Shai and saw a role player instead of a revolution. So they passed on him again and again and again and again and again and again and again. This is the story of the 10 players drafted before Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. At number 1,
the Phoenix Suns select Deandre Ayton.
There was actually nothing to argue about. He was the consensus number 1 pick from the moment the draft lottery ended. A 7-foot center out of Arizona with a 7'6" wingspan, a 43-inch vertical, and the kind of fluidity that big men simply are not supposed to have. He moved like a guard, finished like a center, and ran the floor like somebody had the fast forward button pressed the whole time. At Arizona, he averaged 20 points and 11 rebounds while winning Pac-12 Player of the Year as a freshman. Scouts were calling him a franchise cornerstone with comparisons coming in fast. From David Robinson all the way down to young Hakeem. He was going to be the next great NBA center.
This guy is going to be a multi-time All-Star, JB. I mean, people, whether or not he's the first pick, he's no later than the 2nd or 3rd pick.
And just to remind y'all, the center position was sort of dead throughout the 2010s. Ever since Dwight Howard, the league was starving for a dominant big, and Ayton felt like the answer to everything. There was just one problem. The Suns coach at the time had spent years mentoring a teenager in Europe who was about to be drafted 3 picks later. He reportedly had minimal input on the pick.
Yo, I play Fortnite 24/7, bro.
Yeah?
I don't sleep on that.
I'm getting better now.
But the owner already made up his mind. They were taking Ayton, and that decision would follow this franchise for the rest of the decade. But hold on now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. Ayton's rookie season was good. He averaged 16.5 points and 10.5 rebounds on nearly 60% shooting and made the all-rookie first team. The tools that he had were undeniable. But across the hall in Dallas, the guy drafted 2 spots later was already putting up 21 points and winning Rookie of the Year unanimously. That shadow appeared early and never really left because the guys that came after Ayton were sort of generational. His career peak came in the 2021 playoffs when the Suns were on a historic run and Ayton was the engine anchoring the middle. I mean, this guy was everywhere and people figured that he was going to be here for a long, long time.
Crowder looking, throws it alley. Oh! Ayton puts it down! He puts it down!
In the NBA Finals against Milwaukee, he averaged nearly 15 points and 12 rebounds on absurd efficiency. And Phoenix went up 2-0 until Giannis woke up and the Suns dropped 4 games straight. And what came after that was a slow motion unraveling. In the 2022 second round against Dallas, the Suns got blown out by 33 points in a Game 7 at home. And reports surfaced that Monty Williams had told Deandre Ayton that he quit on the team during the game. Ayton later said publicly that he hadn't spoke to Williams at all since that night. And the dysfunction that had been bubbling underneath the surface finally boiled over for everyone to see. The restricted free agency that summer made everything worse. Ayton signed a max offer sheet with Indiana worth $133 million, the largest in NBA history at the time. But Phoenix matched it. Unfortunately for them, that relationship was already poisoned. He showed up to camp cold and distant, and ESPN reported that he simply did not feel valued by the organization anymore. The contract was matched, but the trust was completely gone. Kevin Durant arrived in February 2023 and pushed Ayton even further into the margins. And by September of that year, Phoenix ended up shipping him to Portland in the Damian Lillard trade. Just like that. The number 1 overall pick had become a salary piece in somebody else's transaction. He put up decent numbers in Portland, but never recaptured the momentum of those 2021 finals games. In the summer of 2025, Ayton signed with the Los Angeles Lakers for just $16 million over 2 seasons. And the guy who once commanded a $133 million max contract was now taking a team-friendly deal to play complimentary minutes next to Luka Doncic, the very player that Phoenix passed on to take him first overall. And today, Deandre Ayton averages around 13 13 points and 8 rebounds as a starting center in Los Angeles. And across these 8 seasons being in the NBA, he didn't have any All-Star selections or All-NBA nods. Lakers fans will tell you openly that he fails the eye test more nights than not, getting benched regularly for what coaches and fans alike describe as a consistent lack of effort and engagement. I mean, I'm not a Lakers fan by any means, but I watch this team a lot, and sometimes Ayton just looks so disengaged. I don't know how to put it. The Lakers knew going in that he was a risk, but the center free agent market was essentially empty, and he was the best option available. There are nights when you watch him when you can still see flashes of why he went first overall. And then there are nights where he looks completely disinterested, and you understand exactly why 3 different franchises have moved on from him. The fit with Luka was always going to be awkward. Luka thrives with springy, athletic, lob threat bigs who can defend the pick and roll and just get out of the way. And Ayton has always been more of a mid-range oriented, ground-bound center whose best basketball comes when he's the focal point of the offense rather than a supporting piece. Even during this season, he came out and voiced his frustrations. 8 years removed from being the most coveted prospect in the country, people genuinely talk about Ayton's career as if it's already winding down. And the saddest part is that he's only 27 years old. That kind of fall from grace is a long way to drop in just less than a decade. At number 2,
The Sacramento Kings select Marvin Bagley III from Duke University.
and this is where the draft starts to get painful to look back on. Bagley's pre-draft resume was elite. He reclassified a full year early to attend Duke, meaning he was competing against players significantly older than him and still completely dominated. He averaged 21 points and 11 rebounds on 61% shooting, won ACC Player of the Year as a freshman, and was a consensus first-team All-American. His basketball bloodline ran deep too. His grandfather, Joe Caldwell, was the 2nd overall pick in the 1964 draft and an Olympic gold medalist. Everything about Marvin Bagley on paper screamed franchise cornerstone. The problem was that sitting right there at pick 3 was a 19-year-old from Slovenia who had just won the EuroLeague MVP, the EuroLeague Finals MVP, and the Spanish League MVP all in the same season, becoming the youngest player in history to do it. Do you guys remember that one video that went viral of that kid in the Kings jersey jumping around the TV after they selected Bagley instead of, well, the 3rd pick? I wonder how he's doing. Sacramento GM Vlade Divac had all the options in the world, and he decided that he wanted Marvin Bagley instead.
Marvin is for us, better fit, better player, and great talent. So it was easy choice for us.
The logic was thin even at the time, and history has not been kind to it. Bagley's career was derailed almost immediately by injuries. He played just 62 games as a rookie, then only 13 games in his second season due to a thumb fracture, and then a foot injury. In 3 years with Sacramento, he missed over 100 games. And while he was sitting in street clothes watching from the bench, there were a couple players picked after him that were all NBA and finishing top 3 in MVP voting. That very contrast would break anybody. And that dysfunction turned public on January 3rd, 2021, when a tweet went out from the Bagley family account that read, and I quote, "Sacramento Kings, please trade Marvin Bagley III as soon as possible. Signed, Coach Bagley." His own father was publicly demanding a trade on social media. The tweet got deleted, but that screenshot lives forever. The whole situation became a circus, and Sacramento eventually dealt Bagley to Detroit in February 22 for a package that was essentially salary filler, which told you everything you needed to know about how dramatically his value had collapsed. He bounced around after that. Detroit, Washington, Memphis, and he's currently on the Dallas Mavericks on a minimum contract. So Bagley now plays for the team that got the player Sacramento passed on him to take on a minimum deal as a backup to the backup. I swear, saying this story out loud just doesn't feel real. Through 8 seasons across 6 different franchises, Bagley had averaged around 12 points and 6 rebounds with 0 All-Star selections. His career earnings have exceeded $76 million, so he has been compensated well. But the narrative around him is completely fixed at this point. He is the player that Sacramento chose instead of Shai and so many others, and no amount of decent games on a minimum contract is going to change that sentence. If Ayton was the safe pick that made sense but ultimately disappointed, Marvin Bagley was the pick that made the entire basketball world shake its head, and it's only gotten more painful to look at with every year that passes. But before we get into our next player, we got to talk about something much more serious, like your finances. And believe me, you're not going to want to miss this. That's why I want to tell you about Clover, the sponsor of today's video. Look, we've all been there. Unexpected expenses pop up. Payday might still be a few days away and you need cash now. Maybe it's car trouble, gas, rent, groceries, or just random life events. Clover lets you advance up to $400 before payday with no credit check, no interest, and definitely no late fees. No hidden costs trying to trap you like those predatory payday loans do. Period. This is earned wage access done right. Here's what I love. You can either wait a few days for your money or just pay a small fee to get it instantly. That's it. It's transparent, It's fair, and it's about giving you control of your money. That's the clutch play for your wallet right now. So if you're short on cash, be sure to click the link down in the description or scan the QR code that's on the screen and sign up for Clover to get access up to $400. Using that link or QR code will let them know that I sent you. Major thanks to Clover for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to it. At number 3,
The Atlanta Hawks select Luka Doncic.
And then immediately traded him to the Dallas Mavericks for the 5th pick in the draft and a future first-round selection that became Cam Reddish. The fact that 2 separate teams passed on Luka Doncic on the same draft night is something that deserves to sit with you for a second before we move on. 2 of those organizations passed on Luka Doncic and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander on the same night. That's something that must keep these general managers awake at 3 in the morning, right? Because here's the thing, Luka Doncic was not a mystery. He was not a raw prospect with upside and question marks. He was the most decorated teenage basketball player in the history of the sport. EuroLeague MVP, EuroLeague Finals MVP, Spanish League MVP, Eurobasket champion with Slovenia, the first in the country's history. He accomplished all of that before his 20th birthday.
Smells it out and picks it up himself. Oh, no, he didn't. And then Felipe Reyes.
There was no comparable prospect in the history of the draft. Nobody had ever arrived with a resume anything close to what Luka Doncic brought to the Barclays Center that night. And Dallas, to their enormous credit, recognized exactly what they were getting. They walked away with the most complete young player on the planet. His NBA arrival was overwhelming. He averaged 21 points, almost 8 rebounds, and 6 assists as a rookie, becoming only the 5th player in history to post a 25-5 rookie season, joining Oscar Robertson, Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and, well, Tyreek Evans. If you know, you know. He won Rookie of the Year unanimously. By his 2nd season, he was putting up 28 points, 9 rebounds, and 8 assists, and earning All-NBA first-team honors at just 20 years old. The accolades kept stacking. 5 consecutive All-NBA first-team selections, 6 All-Star appearances, and the 2024 scoring title at 33.9 points per game, making him the first European ever in history to lead the league in scoring. His defining playoff moment came in 2022 when he single-handedly dismantled the Phoenix Suns in the 2nd round, which is worth pausing on because the Suns are the team that took Deandre Ayton over him at number 1. Luka dropped 35 points, 10 rebounds, and 10 assists in a closeout game.
Stunning. 27-point lead. Down goes Johnson. 3. Luka inside. Oh no. They're shredding him.
And the Suns, who had the best record in the league that year, went home in 7 games. He dragged Dallas to the Western Conference Finals that season and the NBA Finals later in 2024, where they got exposed and lost to Boston in 5 games despite everything he put into it. And then came the trade that shocked the basketball world. On February 1st, 2025, Dallas shipped Luka to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis, Max Christie, and a future first-round pick. I mean, I don't need to get into it. We have a whole Luka Doncic video on this channel, but you guys remember your reactions to it. The general consensus was that Dallas had lost the deal badly. Mark Cuban, who had recently sold the team, was quoted saying that if he had to choose between his wife and keeping Luka on the Mavericks, he would be at his lawyer's office preparing for a divorce. In Los Angeles, Luka had been everything you would expect. He's leading the NBA in scoring at 33.5 points per game with almost 8 rebounds and 8.5 assists. And a dominant stretch in March where he averaged 37.5 points, which pushed him firmly into the MVP conversation. Then on April 3rd, 2026, he suffered a grade 2 left hamstring strain that has sidelined him for the rest of the regular season and possibly the playoffs as well. The fact that the injury came against SGA specifically is the kind of detail that would feel too on the nose if you were writing a screenplay. His career averages of 29.2 points, 8.5 rebounds, and 8.5 assists place him alongside LeBron James and Oscar Robertson as one of only 3 players in history to sustain those kinds of numbers across a full career. He is without question a generational talent and one of the best players alive, if you ignore his defense. And yet, through everything, he has 0 championships and 0 MVPs. Both of those things belong to the player drafted 8 spots after him. Luka Doncic is a superstar. He's probably a future Hall of Famer, but in the story of the 2018 NBA draft, he's a reminder that even greatness can be outrun by the right player in the right situation. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander has been that player at every single turn. But let's not get ahead of ourselves, because at number 4,
The Memphis Grizzlies select Jaren Jackson Jr.
This one's hard to criticize, even in hindsight. Jackson came out of Michigan State as the prototype for what every NBA team was looking for in a modern big man. A 7'5" wingspan that could erase shots at the rim, combined with a legitimate three-point stroke that could space the floor and punish defenses for helping off of him. At Michigan State, he averaged 3 blocks per game while shooting from the perimeter, which in 2018 was the exact archetype every front office was trying to build around. Memphis looked at Jaren Jackson Jr. and saw the defensive anchor that could anchor a contender for the next decade. And that vision was not wrong. wrong.
Defense wins championships. So you see where the game's going and everybody's trying to be offensive minded. If you can approach the game from the other way.
His talent absolutely delivered on the promise. In 2022-2023, he led the league in blocks for the second consecutive year at 3 per game, won the Defensive Player of the Year award, and became the youngest winner of that award since Dwight Howard. He earned his first All-Star selection that same season and was also named All-Defensive First Team.
Jackson all left-handed tonight. He's really worked on his handle. Wow, what a shot.
His partnership with Ja Morant, the defensive anchor and floor spacing big playing alongside one of the most explosive point guards in the league at that time, made Memphis one of the most exciting teams in basketball and a legitimate threat in the Western Conference playoff picture. But unfortunately for him, injuries have been the defining and most heartbreaking theme of his entire career. A torn meniscus in the 2020 Orlando bubble cost him nearly a full year. Various ailments disrupted his 2023-24 season. Turf toe surgery in the summer of 2025 delayed his start to the current year. And then the cruelest blow of all came in February 2026, when Memphis traded him to the Utah Jazz on a blockbuster deal that brought back 3 future first-round picks. Triple J played exactly 3 games as a Jazz player before being diagnosed with PVS, which is a rare and serious knee condition that required season-ending surgery. He signed with a new team, and his season was over before he could even learn his new teammates' tendencies. You guys know the turmoil that was happening in Memphis, right? And they tried trading Ja, nobody wanted him, and a lot of teams around the NBA wanted Triple J, so unfortunately, they had to clear their books by losing him. Despite signing a $240 million extension just months earlier, the Grizzlies moved on from him anyway. Unfortunately for them, the Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson Jr. duo just wasn't worth the risk. Whether that was the right call is something Memphis fans are still debating. Jackson's career averages sit around 18 points, 5 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks per game with a Defensive Player of the Year trophy and 2 All-Star selections to his name. When he's been healthy and engaged, he's looked exactly like the player Memphis hoped they were drafting. The problem is that healthy and engaged stretches have been frustratingly rare. And at 26 years old, he's now heading into a full season of rehab on a team that's still figuring out what it wants to be. The talent was always there with Jaren Jackson Jr., and in many ways, it still is. He just hasn't been able to stay on the floor long enough to build the kind of sustained legacy that his ability deserves. And that gap between potential and reality is what makes his story one of the most frustrating in this entire draft class. At number 5,
The Dallas Mavericks select Trae Young.
and immediately traded him to the Atlanta Hawks as a part of the Luka Doncic deal. People actually thought that Atlanta had won that trade. Trae Young at Oklahoma was unlike anything college basketball had seen in years. He averaged 27.5 points and almost 9 assists, becoming the only player in NCAA history to lead the nation in both categories simultaneously. You guys remember the Steph Curry comparisons? A small, baby-faced guard with an impossible shooting range and a vision for the game that made everyone around him better. Draft analysts were split down the middle on whether Atlanta or Dallas had gotten the better end of the deal. And for the first couple of years, that debate felt very much alive. His NBA arrival was rocky at first, but by his second season, he figured it out. He was an all-star by year 3 and was averaging over 25 points and 9 assists per game with a consistency that very few guards in the league could match. He led the league in assists in multiple seasons and became Atlanta's all-time leader in both three-pointers made and assists, which for a franchise that had some very good players over the years is not a small feat. But his defining moment came in the 2021 playoffs. The Hawks were a 5 seed facing the New York Knicks in the first round. Playing in Madison Square Garden, one of the most hostile environments in all of sports for a visiting player, and well, Trae Young traded it like a stage built specifically for him. He hit a step-back floater over Derrick Rose with 0.9 seconds left to win Game 1, then turned to the crowd and bowed. That bow became one of the most iconic moments in recent playoff history, and the villain era of Trae Young was born in real time. He carried Atlanta past the Knicks, past the Philadelphia 76ers after overcoming a 26-point deficit in Game 5, and into the Eastern Conference Finals against Milwaukee, where he dropped 48 points, 11 assists, and 7 rebounds in a Game 1 victory.
I find an answer for this man right here. Oh my goodness. Oh, no, he didn't. No, he didn't.
The basketball world all believed that Atlanta was going to the finals. Then a bone bruise in his foot derailed the run. The Hawks lost in 6, and they have never came close to that moment again. What followed was a long, slow fading of that narrative. The defensive limitations that had always been there became more glaring as the league adjusted to him. The ball-dominant style that made him electric in year 3 started to feel like a ceiling rather than a feature by year 6. The Hawks kept adding pieces around him, trying different combinations, and none of it worked well enough to get them back to where they were in 2021.
I mean, it's unfortunate that private situations and private conversations get out to the public, but I guess that's what the world we live in now.
The relationship between Young and the organization deteriorated quickly over the time until January 2026, when Atlanta traded him to the Washington Wizards for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. The fact that no picks were included told you everything about how far his trade value had fallen from the player who once had people debating whether Atlanta had won the Luka trade. His 2025-26 season had been devastated by injuries. An MCL sprain costed him over 20 games early on, and he has only appeared in a total of 15 games between Atlanta and Washington while averaging 18 points. He's 27 years old, owed $49 million next season, and trying to rebuild his relevance on one of the worst teams in the league. But the duo of Trae Young and Anthony Davis does sound fun, if healthy. The Trae versus Luka debate that was born on draft night seems to have been settled, and both of them, for all of their individual brilliance, are still chasing the one thing that the player drafted 6 picks after Trae Young already has sitting right on his mantle. Trae Young was supposed to be the steal of the draft night trade. Instead, he became a cautionary tale about how quickly a star's window can close when the winning just never comes. At number 6,
The Orlando Magic select Mohamed Bamba from the University of Texas.
and if you were a scout in 2018, the pick made complete sense on paper. Mo Bamba was a physical anomaly unlike anything the draft had seen in years. At the combine, his wingspan measured 7 feet 10 inches, shattering the all-time NBA record. He ran a 3/4 court sprint faster than Russell Westbrook. At Texas, he blocked almost 4 shots per game and looked like the kind of defensive force that could anchor a franchise for 15 years.
Bamba!
Oh, my goodness! The vision scouts had was a Rudy Gobert caliber rim protector who could also develop a 3-point shot over time. His childhood friend Sheck West had already released a song with his name on it that was climbing the charts. I'm sure you guys remember that. That cultural moment around Mo Bamba felt enormous. And well, unfortunately for him, the song ended up outlasting his career. Bamba spent his first 2.5 seasons buried behind all-star Nikola Vucevic in Orlando, averaging just 15 minutes per game and never getting a real opportunity to show what he could become. A stress fracture ended his rookie year early, and then he contracted that one sickness that pretty much everybody got, and he ended up dealing with lingering symptoms that affected his conditioning and energy levels well into the 2021 season. By the time he was healthy enough to compete at full strength, the Magic were deep into a rebuild and the development timeline felt permanently disrupted. His one real opportunity came in 2021-2022, when he finally earned a starting role and posted 10.5 points, 8 rebounds, and almost 2 blocks per game while shooting 38% from 3, which was real evidence of the player scouts had imagined. But that was his contract year, and the motivation that comes with playing for a new deal has a way of inflating numbers in ways that do not always hold up afterwards. And as y'all know, that following season unraveled everything. He was suspended twice for separate altercations, including a 4-game ban for throwing punches at Austin Rivers, and was eventually traded to the Lakers for Patrick Beverley. From there, his career became a series of brief stops and quick departures. Philadelphia, the LA Clippers, 10-day contracts with New Orleans and Utah. The Toronto Raptors ended up signing him in December 2025, played him for a total of 6 minutes across 2 games without him scoring a singular point. After that, he signed 2 more 10-day contracts with Utah in early 2026, but then waived him again after falling ill. Which takes us to today. Mo Bamba plays in the G League, where he averages around 17 points and 12 rebounds against players who are fighting for their own NBA dreams. He's 27 years old and an unrestricted free agent with no realistic path back to a meaningful NBA roster spot. His career NBA line reads 366 games, 6.7 points, 5.5 rebounds, and less than a block and a half per game. The record-setting wingspan, the one that shattered combine records and had scouts convinced that they were looking at a generational defensive talent, ultimately measured very little in the end. Mo Bamba's the player who had the most physically overwhelming profile of anyone selected and ended up with the least to show for it. That wingspan that broke records never broke through. At number 7,
The Chicago Bulls select Wendell Carter Jr.
This one was refreshingly straightforward. Carter came out of Duke as a polished, technically sound big man who had done everything right. He also played alongside Marvin Bagley at Duke. And would you believe me if I told you that he outperformed him on a permanent basis at almost every advanced metric? He even won a gold medal at the 2016 FIBA Under-17 World Championship. The kind of player whose value was built on reliability and IQ rather than just raw athleticism or upside. He had actually considered attending Harvard before choosing Duke, which tells you something about the kind of person and player he was. Chicago gave him a starting role from day one, and he held on to it.
Meet me at the rim.
Tipping. No.
Wendell Carter.
Shot up. No.
Wendell Carter. Not
in his neighborhood.
His Bulls tenure was defined by modest production and reoccurring injuries though, and he never played more than 44 games in an entire season with that franchise. The Bulls eventually decided to move on and traded him to Orlando in March 2021 in a deal that sent Nikola Vucevic to Chicago. And that trade turned out to be the best thing that ever happened to Wendell Carter Jr. In Orlando, away from the chaos of a Bulls organization that never quite figured out what it wanted to be, Carter finally had room to grow. He developed into a legitimate starting center, averaging 15 points and 10 rebounds over his first 2 full seasons with the Magic and earning a 4-year, $50 million extension in the process. His 3-point shot improved, his defensive positioning got sharper, and he became exactly the kind of two-way anchor that a young rebuilding team needs. His best stretch came in the 22-23 season when he posted 15 points, 9 rebounds on over 52% shooting, and Orlando rewarded him again with another extension in October 2024. This time, 3 years, $58.7 million. The main problem is that the Magic kept developing. Paolo Banchero emerged as a franchise cornerstone. Franz Wagner established himself as one of the best young wings in the league. Jalen Suggs grew into a legitimate starting guard. And somewhere in the middle of all of that growth, Wendell Carter Jr. stopped looking like a long-term piece and started to look like an overpaid placeholder. Magic fans who were once grateful for his steady presence have grown increasingly vocal about the fact that he does not fit the direction the team is heading. And the $58.7 million extension that felt reasonable in October 2024 looks considerably harder to justify heading into the playoffs. He currently averages around 12 points and 7 rebounds. Numbers that are perfectly fine for a backup, but difficult to defend as a starter on a team with genuine championship aspirations. The honest assessment of Wendell Carter Jr. is that he did everything that was asked of him and became exactly the player his draft profile suggested he'd be. He was never going to be an all-star, and nobody who watched him at Duke ever seriously thought he would be. He was going to be a solid, dependable, professional NBA center, and that's precisely what he became. The issue is that solid and dependable on a $58 million contract on a team that is trying to take the next step is starting to feel like a problem rather than an asset. In the story of this draft, Wendell Carter Jr. is the guy who met his ceiling, never pretended it was higher than what it was, and got paid handsomely to do so. At number 8,
The Cleveland Cavaliers select Collin Sexton.
And if you followed college basketball in 2017-18, you already knew exactly who he was before the draft had even started. On November 25th, 2017, Alabama was playing Minnesota and kept losing players to fouls and ejections until they were down to just 3 eligible players for over 10 minutes of the second half. Collin Sexton, a freshman, responded by scoring 40 points and nearly winning the game all by himself. The Young Bull nickname was born that night, and from that moment forward, every scout in the country had him circled on their board. Cleveland took him 8th and handed him the keys almost immediately, and he delivered right away too. He was aggressive from night 1, and by his 3rd season, he was averaging 24 points per game on solid efficiency. His signature performance came on January 20th, 2021, when he dropped 42 points in a 147-135 double overtime victory over a Brooklyn Nets team that had Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving all playing together.
Sexton works on Irving, trying to get loose. He'll fire. He knocks it down!
Then on November 7th, 2021, in his contract year, Sexton tore his left meniscus against the Knicks and played just 11 games that season. That timing couldn't have been worse. Cleveland ended up using him as a part of the package to acquire Donovan Mitchell from Utah, sending him to the Jazz on a 4-year, $72 million deal. He's remained a productive scorer since then, putting up consistent numbers in Utah and later in Charlotte. And he currently plays for the Chicago Bulls, where he averages 14 points per game off the bench. He is 26 years old and still a useful NBA player. But the trajectory that night in double overtime against Brooklyn suggested that he was destined for something considerably bigger than what his career has become. Without that injury, the conversation around him might look completely different. Maybe Cleveland would have built around him long term. Maybe he would have developed into a legitimate all-star caliber guard. Instead, he's a well-paid backup scorer on a rebuilding Bulls team, bouncing between franchises, never quite recapturing the momentum that felt so inevitable watching him drop 42 on 3 Hall of Famers in a double overtime road win. Collin Sexton's career can show you how a single injury in a single game can close a window before it ever fully opened. At number 9,
The New York Knicks select Kevin Knox.
And this one hits differently than any other pick in this entire draft because of one specific detail that gets overlooked in most conversations about the 2018 class. Kevin Knox and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander were teammates at Kentucky. They both played together there and were both one-and-done freshmen, practiced against each other every single day, competed in the same system, and went through the same development process under one of the most experienced coaching staffs in college basketball. the SEC Freshman of the Year who averaged 15.5 points and was considered by most analysts to be the more NBA-ready player of the two. SGA was a 4-star recruit ranked 31st in his class who didn't even crack the starting lineup until mid-season. The Knicks drafted Knox at 9th. SGA went 11th, and the distance between those two picks has only grown wider and more painful with each passing year. Knox's rookie season offered a window of genuine hope. He averaged almost 13 points per game with 57 starts, and there were stretches where you could see the player New York believed they were drafting. Long, athletic, with the shooting touch to play on the perimeter and the size to create mismatches. But his 37% field goal shooting that rookie year was a warning sign that was easy to dismiss at the time and impossible to ignore in retrospect. By his second season, his minutes were cut nearly in half. By his third season, he was a deep bench afterthought. His trajectory was a perfectly descending line, each year bringing fewer shots and fewer reasons to believe the turnaround was coming. New York traded him to Atlanta in the Cam Reddish deal in January 2022, and he was the salary filler in that transaction, not the asset. He drifted through Detroit, Portland, back to Detroit, got waived by Utah, and landed in the G League. Golden State gave him brief NBA cameos in 24-25, but he didn't make the NBA roster for the 25-26 season. Today, Kevin Knox plays for the Windy City Bulls, Chicago's G League affiliate, where he averages around 22 points per game and set a career high of 40 points in March 2026. He's 26 years old, still very clearly talented enough to dominate at that level, but unfortunately he's completely out of realistic NBA opportunities. His Kentucky teammate, the one ranked 22 spots below him in the recruiting class, is currently the reigning MVP and NBA champion, averaging over 31 points per game for the best team in the Western Conference. There's no diplomatic way to frame that contrast. That gap between two players who started in essentially the same place is the starkest illustration of just how wrong the evaluation process can be and how impossible it is to predict who a 19-year-old can truly become. At number 10,
the Philadelphia 76ers select Mikal Bridges.
They immediately traded him to the Phoenix Suns for the 16th pick and a future first-round selection, which made the moment bittersweet in a way that Bridges has never quite been able to shake. His mother worked for the Philadelphia 76ers organization. He grew up dreaming of playing for his hometown team, went to Villanova just down the road, won 2 NCAA championships there in 2016 and 2018, and then sat in the green room on draft night and watched his dream come true for about 30 seconds before he was traded away. What followed was a career built entirely on showing up. As of today, Mikal Bridges has played 638 consecutive NBA games, the 8th longest streak in league history, and he has never missed a game since being drafted. He never missed one in college either, playing all 116 games across 3 seasons at Villanova. The nickname The Warden came from his lockdown perimeter defense. He was named All Defensive First Team in 2022 and finished 2nd in Defensive Player of the Year voting. And for several seasons in Phoenix, he was considered one of 2 or 3 best perimeter defenders in the entire league.
George drives, blocked by Bridges.
His time with the Suns was productive, but largely overlooked, which is the story of his career in many ways. Being excellent and quiet is not always enough to get the recognition that you actually deserve. The Kevin Durant trade in February 2023 sent Bridges to Brooklyn, and that's where people finally started paying attention to him as an offensive player in his own right.
Get into it. Bridges gets around the defender and is still fouled.
In his first 3 games as a Net, he scored 45, 44, and 42 points on 3 consecutive nights, which was the kind of eruption that made the entire league stop and ask where that version of Mikal Bridges had been hiding in Phoenix. His averages that season settled around 19.5 points per game, a genuine leap that revealed offensive capabilities his previous roles had never required him to show. And then in June 2024, Brooklyn traded him to the New York Knicks in a deal worth 4 unprotected first-round picks, finally delivering him to a city he had always wanted to play in, even if it was not the team that drafted him. He signed a 4-year, $150 million extension in August 2025 and currently averages 15 points, 4 rebounds, and 4 assists as a critical piece on a Knicks team holding the 3rd seed in the Eastern Conference. He was reunited with his Villanova teammates Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart.
Bridges puts up a 3. Bang! Bang! Mikal Bridges wins it at the buzzer!
And on paper, everything looks fine. But trust me, Knicks fans have not been quiet about their frustration.
Mikal Bridges, Leon Rose, the honeymoon's over, dog. The honeymoon's over.
The combination of 4 unprotected first-round picks surrendered and a $150 million extension handed to a player averaging 15 points had created real resentment among a fan base that expected more from the investment. There's a vocal contingent of New York fans who have fully turned on Mikal Bridges, arguing that his production does not come close to justifying what the organization gave up and paid to get him.
I don't even know how it's possible to score
0 points!
And the Iron Man streak, the 638 consecutive games that sounds impressive on the surface, has actually become a talking point used against him rather than for him. Critics argue that the reason he never misses games is because he never plays through anything that would actually require missing them. That the streak is less a testament to toughness and more a reflection of someone who never put his body in the kind of danger that comes with being a truly impactful player.
And a foul on Bridges. It is 6 seconds. And that's it for Mikal Bridges.
Whether that's fair or not is debatable, but the sentiment is real and it's very loud in New York right now. The honest thing to say about Mikal Bridges is that he's one of the most consistent and reliable players of his generation and still has not made an all-star team, which says as much about how the league values his particular skill set as it does about his actual impact. He doesn't fill up the box score in ways that jump off the page, but every team he's been on has been better because he was there. The problem is that in New York, on that contract, with those picks attached to his name, better is just not good enough anymore. And while his career has been good by almost any standard, the distance between good and what comes next in the story is the distance between a role player and a revolution. Now, what you've all been waiting for at number 11.
The Charlotte Hornets select Shai Gilgeous-Alexander.
And then traded him to the Los Angeles Clippers for Miles Bridges and 2 future second-round picks. Before we get into what he became, it's worth spending a moment on what the scouts thought he was, because the gap between the scouting report and the reality is one of the most staggering miscalculations in modern draft history. Bleacher Report wrote that without elite speed, athleticism, or reliable three-point shot, SGA projected as more of a role player than a star. His ceiling was compared to Elfrid Payton. He was a 4-star recruit ranked 31st in his class who did not crack Kentucky's starting lineup until mid-season. He weighed 180 pounds. Everything about the pre-draft conversation about SGA suggested the league was looking at a perfectly fine backup guard with a high floor and a modest ceiling.
This is Knox's team, but I'll tell you what, this has been Gilgeous-Alexander's game.
What they missed was everything that actually mattered. As a rookie with the Clippers, he averaged 10.8 points, earned all-rookie second-team honors, and gained playoff experience against the Golden State Warriors. His development was being quietly shaped by assistant coach Sam Cassell, who later said he gave Shai everything he had. Every piece of knowledge accumulated across a Hall of Fame playing career. The foundation being laid in those early years was invisible to most people watching, but it was real. Then came the trade that will be studied in business schools and front offices for the next 50 years. On July 10th, 2019, the Clippers traded Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Danilo Gallinari, 5 first-round picks, and the rights to swap 2 additional first-round picks to Oklahoma City for Paul George. That's right, just Paul George. The Clippers surrendered an entire decade of draft capital and the player who would become the best in the world for a superstar who would later walk out the door without achieving anything. Oklahoma City, widely mocked at the time for accepting the trade, used those picks to build one of the deepest, most talented rosters in the league and watch their young franchise cornerstone become the player every team in the league wishes they had. And by the way, at the time of recording this, the Clippers were just eliminated from playoff contention from the Golden State Warriors in the play-in, which means yet another lottery pick will be owned by the Oklahoma City Thunder. This trade happened 7 years ago, and the Clippers are still paying for it. SGA's development from that point forward was methodical and relentless in equal measure. Year 2 in OKC, 19 points per game. Year 3, 23.7 points on over 50% shooting before an injury ended his season early. And then in 2022-2023, the supernova ignited.
Shai once again going to work on McLaughlin on the step back, and he buries it.
He averaged 31.5 points, 4.8 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1 block on 51% shooting and 90% from the free throw line, becoming only the second guard in NBA history after Michael Jordan to average 34-4-1-1 on 50% shooting. The comparisons to Michael Jordan were no longer a hyperbole. The following season, he posted 30 points, 5.5 rebounds, 6.5 assists, and a league-leading 2 steals per game while shooting 53.5% from the field. He finished second in MVP voting. OKC won 57 games and earned the Western Conference top seed. And then in the 24-25 season, he broke through entirely.
Third quarter. Shai able to check DiVincenzo. Masterful from SGA.
He won the scoring title at 32.7 points per game. He won the MVP award, becoming only the second Canadian player in history to do so after Steve Nash. He led Oklahoma City to the NBA championship and was named Finals MVP after scoring 38 points in Game 1 and 29 points with 12 assists in the decisive Game 7 against Indiana. He became only the 4th player in history to win MVP, Finals MVP, and the scoring title in the same season, joining Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Michael Jordan, and Shaquille O'Neal. That's pretty good company, don't you think? His 2025-26 season has been arguably even more dominant. He's averaging just over 31 points, 6.5 assists, and 4.5 rebounds on 55% shooting. Those are career best efficiency numbers that are historic by any measure. He even set a record of 130 consecutive games with at least 20 points, surpassing Wilt Chamberlain's mark of 126. Anytime you break Wilt's record, just know you made it. The Oklahoma City Thunder sit at 64-17, the best record in the NBA, and are also heavy favorites to repeat as champions. What makes Shai Gilgeous-Alexander special is not something you can measure at the combine. It's not wingspan or vertical leap or sprint time, though his physical tools are exceptional. What makes him special is his mastery of declaration, his ability to go from full speed to a complete stop in a fraction of a second in a way that no defender in the league has found a reliable answer for. He weaponizes the mid-range in an era that declared the mid-range as dead. He draws fouls at a rate that borders on supernatural, which some people do use against him, calling him a foul merchant. But what makes him stand out in the midst of all the foul baiting accusations is his incredible footwork. He's not just looking for the foul call. He's fooling his defender to foul him. So don't fall for all the casuals saying that Shai is bad for basketball. This guy is truly incredible. He even defends with a kind of engaged intensity that stars at his offensive level rarely bother to bring. He is literally the complete package in a way that this generation of basketball has not seen very often. And here's the bold truth about where Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is headed. Brace yourselves. He is 26 years old. He already has an MVP, a championship, a finals MVP, a scoring title, and 3 All-NBA first-team selections. He's putting up numbers that only Michael Jordan, LeBron James, and a handful of the greatest players in the history of the sport have ever touched. Magic Johnson won 5 championships and is considered the greatest point guard of all time. Isaiah Thomas won 2 and defined an era. Oscar Robertson averaged a triple-double for an entire season. Steph Curry changed the geometry of basketball, won 2 MVPs, one of them unanimously, and 4 championships. These are the names that occupy the conversation about the greatest point guards in the history of the sport. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander at 26 years old, with the trajectory that he's on, the efficiency that he's playing at, and the winning he's already doing, he's not just knocking at that door. He's walking through it. If he wins one more championship, one more MVP, and continues performing at this level for the next 4 or 5 or 6 years, the conversation about the top 3 point guards in NBA history will have his name in it. And nobody who has watched him play this season will be able to argue otherwise. 10 teams passed on him. 10 organizations looked at the player who become all of this and decided that they had a better option. And every single one of them has had the chance to watch him become the best player in the world from a distance, wondering what might have been if they had just trusted what they could not quite see on that draft night in June 2018. The 2018 NBA draft was not just another night in basketball history. A league full of organizations making decisions with incomplete information, trying to project 19 and 20-year-olds into the future and guess which ones would still be standing when it mattered most. Some of those picks made sense and still disappointed. Some were defensible in the moment and look indefensible now. Some of those players became superstars who still cannot claim the ultimate prize. And some never made it out of the first act of their careers before the story ended quietly, without a championship, without an all-star appearance, without the things that they were drafted to accomplish. 10 different versions of what the NBA can do to even the most promising careers. And then there was pick 11, the skinny kid from Kentucky who scouts compared to Elfrid Payton, the prospect nobody thought was going to be a star. He has an MVP. He has a championship. He has a finals MVP. He has a scoring title. He has the best record in the Western Conference heading into the playoffs and the most lucrative contract extension in NBA history. He is 26 years old and he is just getting started. And the argument that he's on his way to becoming one of the 3 greatest point guards the sport has ever seen is not a stretch anymore. It's simply what the numbers say and what your eyes confirm every single night he steps onto the floor. 10 teams passed on Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, and the league has been paying for that mistake ever since. What draft class do you want to see me cover next? Let me know in the comments down below. And be sure to check out our podcast channel, Jay-Z Courtside. Now that the playoffs are here and the NBA is ramping up, you do not want to miss these episodes. If you enjoyed this one, hit that like button and please, please, please subscribe. And if you got some extra time, I think you'll love the videos that are on the screen right now. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.